spinous process is C7. So just by palpating the cervical vertebra C7, which is most prominent, you have an idea that this vertebra, the vertebra which is most prominent in the cervical region, is C7. Okay, and the inferior border of the scapula will correspond to T7 and level. Okay, and the inner aspect, the line connecting the iliac crest, the highest point of the iliac crest, the line connecting the iliac crest is L4 vertebra. Okay, so while giving the injection, we palpate these spines, and by this surface landmark, we judge in which space we are. Okay, so when we palpate both this upper iliac crest, the highest point of the iliac crest, the line crossing that both iliac crest will be L4 spinous process. If there is spinous process in that line, it will be the spine of L4 vertebra. And if there is a space where the line crosses, if there's a space, intervertebral space, then it will be L4, L5 intervertebral space. So these landmarks are very important while giving injections, subarachnoid injections, okay, or spinal anesthesia. So what sacral hiatus, the groove or depression just above or between the gluteal cuffs above the coccyx. So just above the coccyx, when you feel a groove, a horseshoe groove, then it is sacral hiatus. So at this space, we give caudal block, okay, in children's. So again, you all know that spinal cord extends from foramen magnum to L1 in upper border of L2 in adults. So this is very important. And in infants, it extends from foramen magnum to L3 vertebra. Why it is very important? Can anybody tell me? Hello? It is important because when we give injection at a higher level in children, it will there is a chances that we may injure the spinal cord because it extends to L3 vertebra in children's. So the level of giving spinal anesthesia in children is far below the L3 vertebra. So the space which is selected for giving spinal anesthesia in children is L4, L5 space, not higher than that, because there are chances that we can injure the spinal cord. Okay. Now there are three meninges which are the continuation of the brain. This is dura mater subarachnoid space and the subdural space. So these are the spaces we should always we should be familiar with. So the inner covering of the spinal cord is the pia mater, which is deeply adherent to the spinal cord, which can't be separated. So the spinal cord gives 31 pairs of spinal nerve. An extension of pia mater, the filum terminal, penetrates the dura and attaches the terminal end of spinal cord, conus medullaris, to the periosteum of the coccyx. And it is supplied by two arteries, one pair of posterior spinal artery and one anterior spinal artery. Okay, and the anterior spinal artery is the branch of vertebral artery, whereas the posterior spinal artery is the branch of posterior inferior cerebral artery. This is the picture of the vertebra. This is body. This is inferior articular facet. This is very important because while giving spinal, we used to palpate this spinous process, and in between the two spinous process, in between the spinous process of the two vertebrae above and the below, in between we insert the needle and inject the drug. So what is the mechanism of action of spinal anesthesia? The principal site for neurocell blockade. When I'm saying neurocell blockade, it means it includes spinal, epidural, and caudal also. So the principal site of neurocell blockade is the nerve root. Okay. Now what happens? In this, local anesthetic is injected into the CSF in spinal anesthesia, while in the epidural space in epidural anesthesia and in caudal anesthesia. It means in both the techniques, in all the three, that is spinal, epidural, and caudal, which are the neuraxial blockade, the principal site of action is the nerve root, but the site of injection of the drug differs. It means in spinal anesthesia, we inject drug in the CSF, while in epidural and caudal, we inject the drug in the epidural space and caudal space. In the epidural space, but the site of inserting the needle changes in epidural and caudal. In caudal, we inject the needle in a caudal space, while in epidural, we can inject the drug from the cervical to the lumbar and see the coccyx, sacral area also. Okay, समझ में आ रही है कुछ बात? Okay. Blockade of the neural transmission occurs, that is conduction in the posterior nerve root fiber interrupt the somatic and the visceral sensation, whereas the blockade of the anterior nerve root fiber prevents efferent motor and autonomic outflow. There are some important and interesting facts that the cardiac accelerator fiber, it originates from T1 to T4. So the blockade until this level, if we achieve a block in spinal anesthesia to T1, then there will be bradycardia and there will be severe bradycardia, and the contractility of the heart will also decrease. Okay, and the vasomotor fiber, it originates from T5 to L1. Okay, it determines the vasomotor tone of the body. And vasodilation in subarachnoid occurs because of the block in these fibers. Okay, sympathetic outflow, it arises from T5 to L1. And because of the block of T5 and T5 to L1, the sympathetic flow block occurs. Because of this, there is an increase in the vagal tone, and there occurs a contracted gut, and the gut has an active peristalsis, which gives a very good environment for surgery. And the most dependent part in the in supine position, when we lie down, the most dependent part for the drug to settle is T4 and T8. Okay? And it is important for hyperbaric solution. I will tell you afterwards what is hyperbaric, hypobaric. So site for injection of spinal anesthesia, it is chosen is L3 to L4 or L4 to L5 or even L2 to L3, because spinal cord ends at L1 level in adults, and in infants it is, or in children it is L4 to L5. Okay, and the line which is drawn between the highest point in the iliac crust, it is also known as Topher's line. Okay, it usually crosses either the body of L4 or the L4 L5 intervertebral space. So there are 2-3 positions in which we give spinal anesthesia. The diagram which is displayed is the sitting position for spinal anesthesia. It can be given in lateral as well as in prone. In prone position, we use hypobaric solution, and it is used for hypobaric solution. And the position is also known as jackknife position. So I'm not going to the details how we make make the patient to lie down for this spinal anesthesia. You just see the pictures. So this is surface landmark again. When we give spinal anesthesia with patients in a lateral position, this is the position of the patient. A pillow is placed just below the neck of the patient, head of the patient, and the scapula, the lower border of the scapula, it corresponds to the T7 vertebra, and this is Topher's line, which corresponds to L4 vertebra. So when we want to give spinal anesthesia in L3, L4 space, we have to palpate L4 spine or L4, L5 intervertebral space. Just above that, we'll have L3, L4 intervertebral space. So we will give spinal anesthesia at this place. So the surface landmark for spinal anesthesia is very important. So this is lateral position for giving spinal anesthesia. Again, the same picture. So what happens in spinal anesthesia, a single injection of local anesthetic solution is used into the subarachnoid space, usually at the lumbar level. Intrathecal narcotics can also be used. Commonly used intervertebral space for spinal anesthesia is L3, L4. And the largest interspace, which interspinal space, is L5, L1. there are some important facts and which affects the height of the block. See, we are giving the drug at L3, L4 intervertebrate space. So how it will block the sympathetic flow, how it will block the autonomic and motor block, it depends upon certain factors at which the level which the drug achieves. Okay, it depends on the veracity of the anesthetic solution. It depends on the position of the patient while giving the drug, just after giving the drug, and during injection, immediately after injection. Drug dose is also important. See, if you are giving 20 milligram of the drug, say 4 ml of bupivacaine, for say for any surgery of lower limb, it will recede. It will extend to the T4, T5 level. Okay, but if the height of the patient is very high, say 7 feet, it will reach up to T8 level. So the height of the patient, the veracity of the anesthetic solution, and the position of the patient, it all depends. These are the factors which affects the level of the block. Okay, and also the patient age determines the level of the block. Elderly patient more than 80 years have a long duration block. And the patient height is also important, as I've already told you. Intra-abdominal pressures. In pregnancy, in patients for LSCS who are posted, we use spinal block. In them, we use very little amount of the drug, say 2.2 ml only, because in elderly, in fatty patients, in elderly, in fatty patients, and in obstetric patients, we have to decrease the drug by 25%. Okay. So technique, I am not going to the detail, because when you come for the posting, we'll show you all these things, because just by telling you'll not be able to know. So before performing any type of anesthesia, all the resuscitation equipment should always be ready. It is always done in the OT, which is ready for every type of resuscitation. All the equipments for spinal anesthesia is ready before giving spinal anesthesia. Okay. So there are different approaches. There are midline approach and the paramedian approach. So the structure peers in the midline approach are skin, subcutaneous tissue, supraspinous ligament, interspinous ligament, ligamentum flavum, epidural space, dura mater, and arachnoid mater. So this is the sagittal section of the vertebra. So this is the spinous sub. This is skin, subcutaneous tissue, supraspinous ligament, interspinous ligament. This is interspinous ligament. Okay, this is epidural space. Here we inject the drug in epidural anesthesia, and this is the dura mater. And this is the space, subarachnoid space, where we inject the drug in spinal anesthesia. Okay, so when local anesthetic injected, it will block the nerves. Okay, if we inject the drug here, it will spread till here, stays here. So this is again a very good diagram to understand the anatomy where the drug is injected. This is the spinal cord. This is pyometer, which is closely adherent to the spinal cord, and this is subarachnoid space. So in subarachnoid space, what is there? There is cerebrospinal fluid. So this is the space where we inject drug. This is subarachnoid membrane. This is dura mater, and this is the epidural space. This is potential space where we give epidural anesthesia. This is ligamentum flavum, and these two are the bone, say spinous process of the vertebra. So in midline approach, the bag should be draped in sterile fashion. So with advancement of the needle, two POPs are felt. The first is the penetration of ligamentum flavum, and second is the penetration of dura arachnoid membrane. And then what happens? When we encounter the second POP, we remove the stylet, and CSF should appear at the needle hub. So we are sure that we are in the subarachnoid space, because CSF is coming out of the needle, and at that point we inject the desired amount of the drug. So the needle which are used is 26 to 29 gauge, and it will take about 5 to 10 seconds to come for the CSF to come out from the needle, because the gauze of the needle is very fine. So these are the pictures of the needle. One should very be familiar with all these types of the needle. So The spinal needles fall into two main categories: those who cut the dura and those who separate the dura. Okay. So Quinkys, which is most commonly used, Quinkys and Babcock needle, the traditional disposable needles, and the other is the conical pencil type needle, Whitaker and spotted needle. Okay. So these are the dura cutting needle. This is yet another diagram of the different type of needle. So this is Quinkys needle, which is most commonly used. Most commonly we use this type of needle in our settings also. This is 25 gauge Quinkys spinal needle. And this is blunt type pencil point needle. It is the advantage of this type of needle is that it will decrease the post-dural puncture headache. And the advantage of spotted type of needle is that we get a vigorous CSF flow as compared to the other, as compared to similar gauze needles. This is toy needle and this is Husted needle. Toy needle is usually used for insertion of epidural catheters. So mechanism of action is differential blockade. So first of all, autonomic block occurs, then sensory, and then motor block occurs. And now also the sensitivity of the blockade by local anesthetic when injected in the subarachnoid space determined by the axonal diameter of the nerve and the degree of myelination and the anatomy. Okay. The sympathetic block may be 2 dermatomes higher than the sensory block. तो सेंसरी ब्लॉक कैसे पता चलेगा जब अपन पेशेंट को स्पाइनल एनेस्थीसिया देंगे? We judge the sensory block by pain and light touch, and sympathetic block is judged by the temperature. Okay. Now baricity of the spinal anesthesia. What is baricity? So baricity is nothing but it refers to the density of anything with the specific gravity of the CSF. Okay. So isobaric local anesthetic stays where you put it. It means it has a it is the local anesthetic which has the same density or specific gravity as CSF. So what we say it as an isobaric solution or isobaric local anesthetic. Okay. The specific gravity of CSF is 1.003 to 1.008. Now hypobaric, it floats. It is lighter than the CSF. So when we inject the drug, it will be above the CSF. It will not mix with the CSF because it is lighter. It will float above the CSF. And this hypobaric solution is especially used for the anorectal surgeries when the patient is put on the jackknife position, as I've shown you the picture earlier. And in hyperbaric solution, which is most commonly used, you see mostly hyperbaric solution being used in spinal settings. So it settles to the dependent aspect of the subarachnoid space. It is heavier than the CSF. I have told you in the earlier slide that T4 and T8 are the most dependent part of the spine when the patient lies when a patient lies in the supine position. So what is hyperbaric solution? It has local anesthetic, which is the density of the local anesthetic which has specific gravity higher than the CSF, and it is made by adding a dextrose. So I'm not going to this how to make hypobaric and hyperbaric solution. So drug selection for hyperbaric spinal anesthesia, there are different local anesthetic which are used. So these are the list of the different locals: lidocaine, tetracaine, bupivacaine, ropivacaine, and levobupivacaine. These 3 drugs are the newer drugs. Okay, bupivacaine, ropivacaine, levobupivacaine. This bupivacaine we have in our setting, and lidocaine we also have in our settings. Okay. So the percent of the drug which is used is 0.5% of bupivacaine in spinal anesthesia. And to achieve the level of block till T10, we need 8 to 10 milligrams of bupivacaine. Okay. And to achieve a level of T4, we need 12 to 20 milligrams of bupivacaine. In 1 ml of the drug, there is 5 milligram of bupivacaine. So there are several additives: fentanyl, ciclonidine, dexmedetomidine, newer drugs, neostigmine, epinephrine. These are used to enhance the duration of the block and to get a post-operative analgesia. So just after the block, when the surgery is over, when you have given a patient a spinal anesthesia, for the inpatient, the patient should be allowed to leave the recovery room after spinal anesthesia as soon as it can be demonstrated that their block is receding appropriately. It means, say if you have given a block and block for anesthesia till T8 level, and after when the block regresses to T10 level, T4, T8 level, then you will allow the patient to go out of the recovery room. And for outpatient, the patient should be able to ambulate without any orthostatic changes and void before discharge if they are in a high risk group for urinary retention. So these are two criteria at the point where you should allow the patient to move from the recovery room in inpatients and to go home in outpatients. So there are contraindications of spinal anesthesia. We can categorize this into absolute, absolute, relative, and controversial. So there are absolute indications are very important. One should know. First is infection at the site of injection. See, if you are going to give a spinal anesthesia and there is a pus or abscess in the back side of the patient, you will not be able to give. It is contraindication for spinal anesthesia. And if the patient refuses that he doesn't want a spinal anesthesia, then you can't give. Third is coagulopathy and other bleeding disorders. So there are lots of chances that there may be the formation of spinal hematoma resulting in the spinal cord compression. So in coagulopathy and other bleeding disorders, it is contraindicated. Also in severe hypovolemia, because it will block, it has a sympathetic blockage. So further, the patient is in hypovolemic state, and if you have given spinal anesthesia, the patient will go into shock because of hypovolemia and sympathetic blockade. And if the patient has increased intracranial pressure, then also will not spinal anesthesia is contraindicated. In severe mitral stenosis and in aortic stenosis, it is contraindicated. So relative contraindication of spinal anesthesia, sepsis, the patient who is in sepsis, the uncooperative patients, pre-existing neurological deficit, severe spinal deformity, and the controversial are prior surgery at the site of injection, like in spine. Sometimes the patient have spine surgeries, complicated surgery which is going to last for 5 to 6 hours, and the patient prolonged operations, and the operations which with an anticipated major blood loss. So in them spinal anesthesia is better avoided. Now we come to the complications of neuraxial blockage. First is adverse or exaggerated physiological response. So I'm saying adverse or exaggerated because urinary retention will occur because of the blockade of the sympathetic and parasympathetic. Second is high block, and third is total spinal anesthesia. It mostly occurs in the epidural blockade. Cardiac arrest may occur if you don't treat the patient with a high block, because the cardiovascular fibers originates from T4 level. If the block recedes it or it ascends the T4 level, there will be bradycardia, and which will lead to severe cardiac arrest. Anterior spinal artery syndrome, if there is direct injury to this artery and there's bleeding, it will lead to anterior spinal artery syndrome and Horner syndrome. Complication related to needle catheter placement, because we are going to the complications of neuraxial blockage, not only the spinal anesthesia. So there will be backache because of the local trauma in the tissues. Okay, neural injury may occur, nerve root damage if you are giving anesthesia, spinal anesthesia in a higher level, and you're directly injuring the spinal cord. There may be chorda equina syndrome, bleeding, intraspinal epidural hematoma because of some coagulopathy. And because if you have not practiced a sterile technique, there may be meningitis, epidural abscess, etc., infection the site of injection. So complications, bradycardia, it is defined as heart rate less than 50 beats per minute, T1 to T4 involvement leads to unopposed vagal tone. So I told you the cardiovascular fiber originates from T1 to T4. So if this is blocked, there will be unopposed vagal tone and decrease in the venous return, which will lead to bradycardia and asystole. Second is nausea and vomiting. So causes hypertension, increased in peristalsis, opioids, analgesia, etc. Nausea and vomiting may be associated with neuroxyl blockade in 20% of the patient. It's very, very common. Atropine is almost universally effective in treating the nausea associated with high T5 neuroxyl anesthesia. Third is transient neurological syndrome. It occurs more common in the lidocaine. Caudic venous syndrome, there will be involvement of the bowel and the bladder dysfunction. Again, last is high neuroxyl blockade. Excessive dose may lead to high neuroxyl blockade. And if you're not able to judge how much drug is to be given in a patient with a short stature, it will lead to high neuroxyl blockade. Unconsciousness, it will lead to unconsciousness, hypotension, apnea. Okay. Now, hypotension is prevented by a volume loading with 10 to 20 ml per kg of the intravenous fluid. So in this colloid, preferably RL is used. So there are several predictors of hypotension. Low intravascular volume in case of hypovolemia due to external loss by trauma, dehydration, internal loss. Sensitive block more than T5, there will be hypotension. Age more than 40 years. Systolic BP less than 120 mm per Hg. Combined spinal and general anesthesia if you have given, then there is a chances of hypotension. Dural puncture between L2 and L3 and above, it means a higher level of sympathetic block will lead to more hypotension. In emergency surgery, where we don't have the time to resuscitate the patient beforehand and we don't have the time to load the patient with the slides. Okay. And the patient with diabetic patients and patient underlying autonomic dysfunctions. Examples, diabetic patients, they don't have, they have a disturbed autonomic function. No treatment. Treatment of hypotension is very important in spinal anesthesia. How it is treated? It is treated by giving 100% of the oxygen and elevation of the leg, head down. The patient head is down. The fluids resuscitation is done with Restolide. And second is by colloid. Okay. Colloid by 500 to 1000 ml. Colloid is preferred due to increased intravascular time, maintaining cardiac output and uteroplacental circulation. It can be also, hypotension can also be treated by epinephrine, phenylephrine, ephedrine, and mefedrine. Okay. In total spinal anesthesia or in total spinal, this is a complication of spinal anesthesia or epidural anesthesia, more common in epidural anesthesia. So how it is managed? It is managed by securing the airway, breathing, and circulation. Again, secure the airway and administer 100% of the oxygen. Breathing by ventilate by face and mask, or sometimes intubation is also necessary. Circulation treat by IV fluid and vasopressor. Example, ephedrine 2 to 6 milligram or metraminol by 2 milligram increments. Okay. Sometimes adrenaline is also used. So continue to ventilate till the block wears off for 2 to 4 hours. As the block recedes, the patient will begin recovering consciousness, followed by breathing and then movement of arms and finally legs. This is a very important thing, that the postdural puncture headache. So why it occurs? It occurs due to leakage of the CSF from dural defects. It will lead to traction in the supporting structure, especially in the dura and tentorium, and vasodilation of cerebral blood vessels. So it is how it is presented. It is presented by bifrontal and occipital headache, and it is usually worsened when the patient changes her or his position, when is upright, when is cuffing and straining. And it causes nausea, photophobia, tinnitus, diplopia, and cranial nerve palsy also. So treatment plan includes patient is held in supine position, and you have to maintain adequate hydration, and we have to give NSAIDs with caffeine. I have written wrongly. It is with caffeine. Okay, caffeine is very effective in treating the postdural puncture headache because it will stimulate the formation of the CSF, and it will also have vasodilation effect. So it will decrease post-dural puncture headache. Also, it presents, the typical presentation of the post-dural puncture headache is 12 to 72 hours after the spinal anesthesia. Okay, before 12 hours, if the patient is complaining of headache, it is not a spinal headache due to spinal anesthesia. Epidural patch consists of giving 20 ml of the blood. So now I am end with this. मुझे ऐसी चाहिए, हाँ? मुझे ठंडी हवा चाहिए, हाँ? Hello? Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
किसी
ma'am.
को डाउट है अभी इसमें?
Yes, ma'am.
हेलो, किसी को कुछ पूछना है अभी इसमें? इफ somebody has any doubt or queries, कुछ जानने की इच्छा है और तो इतना मतलब ये स्पाइनल एनेस्थीसिया इज वेरी कॉमन टाइप ऑफ एनेस्थीसिया है ना, तो you will encounter this in all your postings and it is very commonly given for all the low volume surgeries. In sections we have 10 to 11 sections daily in SIMS and which are mostly carried out by spinal anesthesia. Okay, so we should always be familiar with this because in your posting you will be told to judge the effect of the block whether it is wearing or not. So next class will be epidural anesthesia. Huh? Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
तो मुझे बताइएगा न्यूरेक्सल
Yes, ma'am.
एनेस्थीसिया मतलब क्या, कौन कौन सा
Yes, ma'am.
एनेस्थीसिया इंक्लूड होता है उसमें, न्यूरेक्सल एनेस्थीसिया में?
Subarachnoid, caudal, and
Hmm.
epidural.
What's your name?
Ma'am, Vinita Mirza.
Okay, your roll number?
139.
वेरी गुड. ओके, सो मतलब ये पता होना चाहिए कि किस टाइप का एनेस्थीसिया पेशेंट को दिया जा रहा है. अगर आप पेशेंट को देखते हो ओटी में, इफ द पेशेंट इज अनकॉन्शियस विद एंडोट्रैकियल ट्यूब इंसर्टेड इन द ट्रैकिया, इट इज जनरल एनेस्थीसिया. जनरल एनेस्थीसिया में पेशेंट कॉन्शियसनेस लॉस नहीं करता है, ठीक है, अवेक रहता है. हाँ, और जैसे हम लोग रीजनल एनेस्थीसिया में पेरिफेरल ब्लॉक भी आता है. जैसे आपको अपर लिम ब्लॉक करना है, आपकी सर्जरी है अपर लिम की, आपको हैंड में कोई सर्जरी करना है तो आप पेरिफेरल ब्लॉक लगाओगे वहां पर, ठीक है. लेकिन वो एक तरीके का रीजनल एनेस्थीसिया है, लेकिन वो न्यूरेक्सल एनेस्थीसिया नहीं है. न्यूरेक्सल एनेस्थीसिया में स्पाइनल, एपिड्यूरल, कॉर्डियल रहता है. इन तीनों का मैकेनिज्म ऑफ एक्शन एक जैसा ही है, ठीक है. ओके, थैंक यू.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.